Hi guys, this is Jennifer Clement-Gingling, and today I'm going to talk about avoiding common mistakes when writing papers, APA style. So there's been some changes, and I know you guys really love APA super a lot. So I thought we would just do a quick overview because things have changed with this new edition. Some are really subtle. Some are going to make your life easier. Some maybe not make your life easier. But I know that graduate students really do not love APA. So I'm going to give you some examples and we'll hopefully get you through the your papers so you aren't missing some of these free points on the assignments. All right. So one of the things you need to do is, when you start your class, you have a paper to write down that due date, put it in your calendar, look at the assignment, understand it. Always look or seek out a rubric for your paper. And what you're going to do when you get that rubric, you're going to look at it and you're going to look at the different sections that are going to be allotted the different points. And this is how you can kind of prioritize where you're going to spend a lot of time with. If you're giving a great deal of points for an introduction, you better make sure it's there. In a good rubric, they may tell you, different things that you need to answer, questions or some tasks that you do within the paper. So it's important to really take a look at that rubric. Have any questions with the rubric, reach out to your professor. Okay, that's what we're here for. If you don't understand, just don't make an assumption because you may be going off on a tangent that's incorrect. Now, just a disclaimer, I do not work for any of these companies. I wish I bought stock in, especially APA Reference Point, but I haven't. But there's a couple different things I want to bring your attention to. Grammarly is a program that I am in love with. What I love with Grammarly, especially if you're not a super writer, it gives you feedback real time. It'll talk about your tenses, rewrite the sentence. It'll give you feedback once you've written it again. It's really nice. What I also like about it, it will correct your emails. So, you look and sound intelligent when you're communicating, and, your discussion posts as well, it'll correct. So if that's something that you're getting graded on, I do recommend you invest in Grammarly. I'm in love with it and I'll continue to pay for it because I really, really like it. APA Reference Point. Now, APA Reference Point I have used since we used floppy disks. I'm a bit OG when it comes to that. And I've found APA Reference Point to be spot on. Their customer service is very good too. And I've been using it probably, I would say, since 1993. And bottom line, it's a good product. It's a small amount to have, especially if you're starting a program. What's nice about APA Reference Point is it sets your paper up so you're able to focus on your content, not all the logistics that go along with APA that can really drive you crazy. The other thing I really like about that program is that you're able to reference right while you're writing and not kind of stop and do whatever. There's tabs up at the top of in your Word doc, Word program that allow you to hit, a journal, a website. They've really expanded what you can. And what's nice is once you do that in your body of your text, it also starts tabulating a reference list, which is amazing. Love, love, love. So APA Reference Point, Grammarly. There's another website that is, really super helpful for writers that have to follow the APA. And that's the Purdue the Owl. And the websites here, you can Google it quickly. What's nice about Purdue the Owl, some of those things that you don't, that are a little bit obscure, they have examples. They have an example paper as well, which is nice because sometimes you're really not sure. It may not look right by you, but it is actually how it's supposed to be in APA. So there's 3 tips there. Okay. Again, review the rubric. Often assignments, have specific tasks that you need to do. You need to understand that and not write creative writing because often these assignments aren't for you to do creative writing per se. All right. So set up you want to set up your paper in APA. You need to make sure you have your title page. You want to, when you're writing your outline for the paper, kind of think about your sections. You want to have your introduction, your conclusion. A lot of students forget that. Take a minute to kind of think about how you're going to organize the paper and write a outline. What I like to do is, if I feel kind of stuck and I'm not ready to write, is I will set the paper up with the program in the Word doc, and I'll make my, initial headings right away. Reference list. This is important that you include that and that it is in APA format, and we'll go over some of the reference tips that should help you. Remember too, your appendix goes after the reference list. So if you're going to add an appendix, you want to make sure that it goes after your reference list. Your number, where do you start numbering? In APA number 7, you're going to start the numbering right on that title page. All right, so your title page. This is what you should include. Now, you may have specific requirements depending on who your professor is, but this is APA number 7 now, 7th edition, what is included. So if you don't get any guidance on what they would like on your reference or your title page, I would follow this format. This is APA edition 7. So you're going to have the title of your paper. You're going to have your author name. Now, keep in mind, in APA, you don't put in RN, FNP, -S, student FNP, you don't put your PhD, your MS, BS, any of it. Your school, you want to spell that out. That's a common error that I see students, on their title page. It kind of sets the tone for the whole paper. They'll put, for example, instead of Utica College, just UC, or for, SUNY IT or SUNY Poly, they'll just use the abbreviations. Nope, you've got to spell it out. After that, you're going to have your course number and name. And then you're going to also have your professor's name. Now, a little word to the wise. You don't want to offend anybody. Now, I'm not that type of PhD, but there are some that get really offended if you put Mrs. instead of Doctor. So it's important that you look at your syllabus. It usually should say on your syllabus, instructor or record and in their credentials. And if you can't figure it out, just ask. Okay, because some people do prefer Doctor or Mrs. or a different title. You also want to check how they spell your name. Okay, I went from bad to worse with my last names, and neither of them are super easy to spell, especially my maiden name. It's a Polish last name, and people give me extra I's, E's, flip things around, put a C in there too. So make sure you check on your syllabus or in your banner web or wherever you register for your class how to spell your professor's name now that this is included on the title page. And then you're going to put down your assignment due date. Okay, so that's important for you to have on your calendar anyway to keep yourself organized. All right, so running head. This is a little bit different in APA 7th edition. The running head is omitted in student papers unless your professor tells you otherwise. So this should be one of those burning questions before you start your paper. Do you want a running head or not? And it may be very clear in your syllabus and or rubric. All right, so your student title page, you're going to have, I want you to note that this is a student title page. There is no running head. The numbers for the page start right on that title page. So the upper right-hand corner, you want to make sure that you have the same font for the whole paper. You are, for the title page, you want to have your title of the paper, and that's going to be centered and bolded. Remember with APA, everything is double spaced. You're going to have your name, the school, the course, and title of the course number and the title of the course, your professor's name, and the due date. So this is just an example so you can take a look. So now take a look at this is considered the professional title page. So this is what you would do if you are going to publish it, if your professor asks you to put a running head in. Now, one thing that's different than in APA 7th edition is that we no longer write out running head, colon, and then, your abbreviated title, all in caps, in the left upper corner. And that was only on the first page. They've taken that running head right off, so you don't have to worry about formatting that because that was a real pain in the neck. But you will if you have a page header. That's another term that they use for a running head. This should be at the top of every page. you want to make sure that this is kind of like a shortened version of your paper's title, and this cannot exceed more than 50 characters, okay? And that's including spacing and punctuation. That's an error, common error. Students will have this big, huge running head, and it's basically, they use this when they blind articles for publication, or maybe it's a juried paper for an award or whatnot. So they would actually rip your title page out that you worked really hard on, and the readers would read it blind, when they'll be able to know what paper it is by the title on the top. Font changed with this one, and I feel like I'm cheating on Times New Roman, but there is a little bit of variation now in the font. Besides the 12-point Times New Roman, you can use 12-point Courier New, 11-point Calibri, 11-point Arial, 11-point Georgia, 10-point Lucinda Sans Unicode, or 10-point Computer Modern. Okay. This too, your school may have decided they're staying with Times New Roman, so just be careful and don't lose points. Just investigate that. If it's supposed to be Times New Roman, use Times New Roman. If they don't, you can use some of these other fonts, which are a little bit easier on the eyes when you read. One common mistake that the students do is you'll have the paper, it looks perfect, everything's in New Times Roman, but as you're looking at it, the running head is maybe in a different font. So make sure that the font is the same for your title page, your running heads, your body, everything. Okay, this is a pain in the neck because APA keeps doing this to us, and in the 7th edition, APA recommends one space after a period to aid readability. Now, I'm going to just point out there is a little feature in Word that should be your best friend. So if you look in the Word program up to the right upper corner, you'll see something Find and Replace. When you click on it, when you click on Replace, in the box to the right, this is what happens. So what you can do, find what? You can do period, space, space, replace with, period, space. And then you can hit replace all, and it's going to totally fix all of your paper. It's nice too if, you've had some corrections or you're really not sure if you maybe did the correct way to abbreviate, like spelled it out and then had your abbreviation afterwards. You can, put in find. I love this option. It's really been helpful. And not a lot of people use it that much, but I think it's a good thing to just bring to your attention. Okay, paragraph indentation. So if you look at APA, it's going to tell you 5 to 7 spaces or a ½ an inch. Okay, this is 1 tab indent. Okay, 1 tab indent for your paragraph indentation. Line spacing, we talked about that, and it should be double spacing for the entire document. This is including quotes 40 with 40 plus words. Okay, when you have a huge quotes, which we're going to talk a little bit about that, try to avoid your quotes if you can, then you'd have to use a little bit different format, but for the most part your whole paper should be 40 plus words. All right, abbreviations, don't use them on the title page. Okay, the first time you need to spell out the word or words you want to abbreviate, and then you follow that by the abbreviation in parentheses. After the first time that you do that, you can use your abbreviation. So for example, Centers for Disease Control is followed by CDC in parentheses. This is how it should look the first time that it's in the text. After that, you can use CDC till the cows come home. All right. One thing that they're really pushing, and it's important as you develop your writing skills, is that you try to use unbiased language. You want to avoid gendered pronouns, for example, he, she, using the S before the he, because this can kind of, push your writer to think about only one gender. So instead of using the gendered pronouns, you should use they or their. You also want to be sensitive about labels. Okay. You want to use adjectives to serve as descriptors rather than labels. We don't like to label our patients. We've probably done this, in clinical practice, the appy in room 4 or the, addict in room 8. So you want to, like I said, just keep that in mind. You want to use your adjectives to serve as descriptors rather than labels. So for example, using the term the alcoholics, you may use alcoholic people or people diagnosed with alcoholism. So just, and it can be a little bit repetitive, but you just don't want to, in either case, lose the spirit of individuality and have your writing appear to be biased, because that's not what you want. Okay, title of the paper. I can't tell you how many papers that I correct that students just don't put a title in. Not sure why. I'm looking for it. So it's really important when the first thing that is in when you start your body of the paper is the title should come first. Now this is on the first line, it's bolded and centered. Okay. It should be the same as the title on the title page. Students do that for some reason too. We'll have 2 different titles, which is kind of strange. So that's really important. I do want you to look at this example on the slide though. Do you notice that there is no label for the introduction? Okay. That's purposeful. Do not label your introductory paragraph. Okay. Just keep that in mind. So APA headings, they have changed these up a little bit. So my advice to you is to use a minimal amount, but use them. So when you're going through your rubric, you may see, different sections that you have to address in the assignment. These should be your level 2 headings. Okay. So, you're going to have your title. It's going to be centered, bold-faced. The next, and I misspoke, not the level 2 heading. That'll be your level 1s after that, So like I said, I've gotten to the point, and it's a common thing too, to, kind of have some feeling like you don't know where to start with your paper. So I'll set the paper up and I feel like at least I'm doing something to kind of start to complete my assignment. So your title, centered, bold. Your level 1 APA heading is centered, bold-faced, uppercase and lowercase heading. A level 2 is left aligned, bold-faced, uppercase and lowercase heading. A level 3 is a left aligned, is bold-faced, uppercase and lowercase and italicized. Okay. A level 4 is indented, bold-faced, upper and lowercase heading with a period, and you begin the body of the text right after that period, after 1 space. Level 5 heading will be indented, bold-faced, italicized, upper and lowercase, and that will also conclude with a period, space, and then you're going to begin the body of the text after the period. All right, references. Oh, I know, references. This can be a pain in the neck, but, we're going to go through some of the changes that are there, and I'm going to give you some tips for hopefully which will help you to know when you need to use your references. All right, so one of the changes in the 7th edition is that the publisher location is no longer included in the reference. For those of you who feel like they finally got APA, they're doing great with it. Yep, now we've changed it. So in the first example, the Columbus Yingling J, you see negotiating emotional order, New York, New York, Elsevier. You don't have to have New York, New York. No longer do you have to have the location. You're just going to put the publishing company. All right. This is a change too. This is interesting. So now in APA, in your reference list, we used to, it used to be only 7. So you would do your first 6 and then ... and then the very last author. However, now in APA 7, in some of the, especially your research articles, they list everybody, and there could be 40 authors. So you have to put the first 19 ... and then your last author in your reference list. Okay. In your reference list, not in your body. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So DOIs have changed a little bit now. It used to be you had to write DOI : and then the DOI number. Now they are allowing you to format them the same as your URLs. So you can see the example in the red is the old way. The new way that we are going to reference the DOIs is example in red or in green. Okay. The other thing is, with URLs too, these are no longer, don't need to write retrieved from. I mean, it's kind of, when you think about it, you're like, no kidding. Where else would I have gotten it? Why would I put that web page? So you're going to have your website page. It will be included unless it's the same as the author. Web titles are now italicized. So take a look at the red. That is the old way. The green way is the new way that we will be referencing URLs if we are using those in our references. Okay. Another change is, just to keep in mind, a common error is a work by two authors. So if in your text you're going to put research by Klumek and Kelly, and you're going to spell out and. If you are putting the reference at the end of the sentence, you've got blah, 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 Klumek, and you can use the symbol for and Kelly to kind of, abbreviate it a little bit. So that's in... If you're in the text, you're going to use the word and. At the end, for the reference, you can use the and symbol. So this is what's changed a little bit 2 and 7. Okay, so it used to be, I think it was greater than 5. You could use et al. Well, they've really made this a little bit easier for you. So work by 3 or more authors. 3 or more can be shortened beginning with the very first citation. Okay, so you will only use the author's last name followed by et al. In a single phrase or parentheses. Okay, so it's Klumek et al. 2020. Or if it's in the text, it'll be Klumek et al. 2020 cited several. There's blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's going to make your life a little bit easier. So work by 3 or more authors. You can use your et al. Immediately. So let's talk about et al. This is a really common error that students make too. And this is you can use that find and replace option in Word as well. So et al. Is the et should not be followed by a period. The period comes after the al. Okay, so there's a certain way why you do it. It's a Latin abbreviation, so you want to make sure that you do it right, because a lot of times I'll have students do et al. And they'll put et period, al period, or they don't put any periods. But the correct way to do et al. Is et space al period. Again, check out that find and replace function. It's going to be helpful for you as you're reviewing your writing. Okay, so if you like it, put a reference on it. Okay, if it isn't your original thought, you need to use a reference. You want to try to avoid secondary sources. Okay, these are your textbooks. You want to use peer-reviewed articles. You want to get something out of your database at your library, your school's library. You don't want to just go to www.wildnurses.com or Wikipedia. These are not appropriate scholarly references. So, and you're going to lose points. A lot of times when I'm reading the papers, the students will say the literature reported XYZ, I'm like, who said this? So you want to have like Klumek 2020 reported XYZ, not just the literature that's like really broad. You want to avoid saying they said, study said, because I'm going to put a comment right in your paper. What studies? You need to, really call out the authors as you are writing about what they have said. If you report an incidence or any percentage or fraction, okay, you want to reference it, okay, because that's not your original thought unless it's your original research. And that may be, but that's just a rule of thumb. If you're going to report a percentage or a fraction, you want to make sure you reference that too. If you say many authors or several authors said XYZ, don't reference it with one author. It makes people crazy. Okay. So you want to make sure that if it's plural, you have several authors. If it's singular, you can have one author. If you read your sentence while you're doing your proofreading and you're saying, you can see your professor saying, who says so? Reference it. And, again, like I said, really avoid, studies said, blah, 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 because you think of your readers saying, what studies? Whose studies? So just some tips for you for when you want to use a reference in your work. All right, so we talked about setting up the paper. You do not want to label your introductory paragraph introduction. Maybe that's just my pet peeve, but it just doesn't look scholarly at all. Keep in mind that this sets the tone. Your intro paragraph sets the tone for your paper. You want to make it interesting. This is where you may use a quote or talk about some incidents to kind of really put your point forward to get your reader interested in what you have to say. Now, one of the things, and I'm going to show you a picture in a minute, but I was doing parent-teacher conference, and I was probably, I was in the middle of my PhD studies at Rutgers. Shout out to Elise Lev. Boy, she worked me over the coals with my APA. But I'm sitting in the parent-teacher conference, and I look up at the wall in my third graders class, and they had this picture of the Hamburger and how to outline your paper, how to outline your paragraphs. And it's important, even at the graduate level, the baccalaureate level, just in good writing period, that you write proper paragraphs and that your paper has the two buns. You want to have the top bun is the introductory paragraph. We talked that it should be interesting. It should set the tone for the paper. It should state the topic for the paper. The meat of the paper is the paragraphs with the support and development of your ideas. You want to make sure you look at your rubric again. I can't say that enough. If it's a high point on your rubric, you see that it's worth 50%. Let me just tell you, it should not be one paragraph or one sentence. Okay. That's just a little tip. If your professor has placed a large percentage of your grade on a certain section, that means that's the part that really you need to, make sure you pay attention to and not rush through and just put a sentence in to address it. Your bottom bun. Okay, this happens a lot, and I know you get fatigued, and I know that a lot of you have clinical practice. I know a lot of you are, running households, and you're exhausted, and it comes out in your writing because you'll have this fabulous paper. I'm ready to, for this fabulous conclusion, and I'm like, where's the rest of it? So it's kind of like eating the hamburger without the bottom bun, okay? It may seem a little bit redundant, but you want to restate your topic statement, kind of like circle back and hit the high points and finish that paper up. Don't leave your readers without that bottom bun, okay? I can't say this enough, okay? But we're going to talk about the Hamburg method. I'm going to show you a picture in just a minute. But 1 to 2 sentences are not paragraphs, okay? On the other end of the spectrum, if you have a whole double-spaced page, and that's a paragraph, you probably need to break it up because it's a run-on paragraph. And that also, you want to make sure you put your best foot forward with your writing. So just a easy way, if you're going through, just look at your pages. If the whole page is like completely just text and there's no indents and there's no headings and it's just like one big, huge paragraph, I want you to break it up. Okay, this is the essay burger for epic proportions. So we talked about the introduction. We talked about the body of paragraph 1, the body of paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and then your conclusion. Okay, so these are just some of the ways that you want to think about when you are writing your paragraphs. Okay, so you use the big burger for your paper. You're going to use sliders per se, little tiny burgers for your paragraphs. So you're going to start with the topic sentence. Okay. You're going to have your supporting and your proof or an explanation. And then you're going to kind of recap things and transition into the next part or the next paragraph. Okay. So keep that in mind. 1 to 2 sentences is not a paragraph. Okay. Some of the things, just some general writing tips. You want to make sure that you minimize or not use any figurative language, metaphors or analogies or slang, this type of thing, unless they're helpful in conveying a complex idea. And that's not really too often. You aren't going to be writing a song or a rhyme or poetry. this is, you think of it as a professional paper. You want to use simple descriptive adjectives and plain language. A lot of times students will add a really or super obese, they'll use some like extra descriptive adjectives, and it can confuse your meaning, but it also, you don't need to have two adjectives to state your point. Don't ask your reader questions. This is, I'm sure I'm not the only professor that's a pet peeve. And really don't write to your reader like you were writing an essay or instructions for a child. Okay, it can be a little bit offensive. One of the things I want you to think about as you're writing, just state the facts. Okay. If you're talking about treatment modalities and you're supposed to do a literature review or discuss, the most current treatment for diabetes, you're not going to include your opinion. Okay. What you're going to do is make an objective assessment of the literature for the best opinion, not, your opinion. So, keep that in mind. This isn't, a forum per se like that. Unless it's your original research, you do not write in first person. Okay. Unless you're writing, that may be different if you're writing about a philosophy paper or something that is a personal type of writing piece. But for the most part, try to avoid writing in first person. You may want to use phrases like the evidence suggests or our study indicates rather than referring to proof or this proves or it's always and never. Those are a couple things you never want to use because no single study can prove a theory or hypothesis, especially if you're reporting findings, either from the literature or your own. And when you're proofreading, as you're going along your sentences, and you can insert the phrase, who cares, leave it out. Okay. You need to write clearly and concisely for your assignments or publications, I hope. Quotes. Okay. Please. If you're going to use them, at least know how to do them. Okay. And I if you like it or not, there's a lot of stuff that you can look up online. You do have to paraphrase. Just throwing a quote in, it can be extremely lazy, especially at the graduate level. It really is not acceptable unless you're using a quote to really prove a point. And that should be one sentence. And that should be maybe the only quote in your whole paper, unless you are talking about, a grounded theory study like I did, where I actually was quoting what the women were saying. So if you want to check that out, you can Google me. I did negotiating emotional order with breast cancer survivors, and that's been published. But anyways, make sure, if you're quoting the work, you need to reference it. You need to include the author, the year of publication, and the page number for the reference. Okay. So you can see in the example below how to reference your quotes. All right. So kind of to circle back, check your rubrics out. Remember that when you're doing a professional and or an academic assignment, this necessarily isn't creative writing, unless you're told that it is. You want to state the facts and write very technically. A hint that I can give you is email a copy of your work to yourself. Computers crash. You may find some time and want to work on your assignment, and you don't have your laptop, but you have access to a desktop or, wherever. So if you email a copy of your work to yourself, that works really nicely. Another thing that you can do is put it in the Google Drive. I'm really starting to love the Google Suite. It really does help with some of your productivity. Make sure you have somebody proofread your work. Make sure you run the spell check, and the find and replace tab on your home, the word ribbon up on the right upper side. So why did I do this? 14 years of correcting papers and correcting the same errors over and over again. I wrote for 7 years for my PhD and the APA 7th edition. Happy writing, and I wish you luck on your assignments.